This is my new horror game. It is inspired by my horrible experience working in a flower factory. In this video, I'll tell you more about why I hated my industrial job, what process I followed to turn a real-life experience into a video game, and what special horror elements I added to the game, which make it even more terrifying to play. Not only that, but I'll also be showing you how I made this whole game from scratch in 2 weeks for a game jam. So why did I hate my job at a flower factory so much that I decided to make a horror game about it? Well, first of all, game development for me right now isn't the best form of income, and I have to make my money somehow. So as a side hustle, I got a job at a local flower factory. But the job was horrible. I had to get up at 6 AM and sometimes work all the way until 6 PM. The days were long and physically demanding. I had to stack boxes and move flowers around all the time. The work environment was also grim. You would go down with an elevator and enter this large, cold factory room. There would be no windows, no daylight, only bright industrial lights with sounds of machinery. Each day after work, I was too tired to do anything. I wanted to do game dev work, but I just couldn't. I didn't have any energy left. After a few weeks, it was already tearing me down, both mentally and physically. So I decided it was enough and quit. The horrors of the long days, the lack of energy I had, the grey industrial environment. All those negative aspects of the job have been stuck in my head ever since I quit, and creating an experience that would show these aspects is something that I want to do. So when the first opportunity arose for making the game, I took it immediately. But how did I turn this real-life experience into an engaging and interesting game? Acerola posted a game jam with the theme of aberration, which means a departure from what is normal, usual, or expected, typically an unwelcome one. I realized this was the perfect opportunity to develop the Flower Factory game, because I wanted to show how an ordinary working experience can turn into something draining and isolating. I kept this theme in mind throughout every part of the game development process, from the design of the physical environment to the sound and color. In order to make something unexpected happen, you have to start from the expected. I had to create a recognizable environment for the player to experience a sense of normality that I could then manipulate as the game goes on. The game starts in a lobby where you are introduced to everyday life. I made this environment purposefully cheerful, with colorful and saturated flowers, plants, and paintings. You also hear birds and nature outside. Everything comes together to make a world that the player can recognize from real life. The player then proceeds to the factory located below, deep underground. The factory is a big grey, unsaturated room, no windows or any signs of the outside world, and the constant, overwhelming sound of machinery. This contrast between the bright, saturated lobby and calm nature sounds with the dark, unsaturated, noisy factory has the player dreading being in the factory, and is exactly the vibe I wanted to convey. That was all for the environment, but I still needed to create some sort of game, and I did this by adding some gameplay. And let's be honest, having a game about working in a flower factory without actually doing the work in the flower factory would be kind of weird. My idea was to add 2 little minigames where the player would sort and crush flowers. The first minigame is something you would expect to experience at a flower factory, but crushing flowers in the second? Why would you destroy something you just carefully sorted, and who would want to buy it? Well, no spoilers here. You'll have to play the game yourself to find out. I also wanted the player to somehow experience the same psychological toll I suffered. One option would be to have the player sort and crush flowers for 12 hours straight, but I doubt anyone wants to play a game like that. Instead, I need to show the toll and horrors in a different, more interesting way. I'll come back to how I accomplished that later. Anyway, that's basically the process I followed. I prioritized beforehand which elements I wanted in the game, that being the feeling of environment, the mundane activities of the day, and the elements of horror. But which elements did I add to the game that made it so terrifying to play? So to make the game more interesting and horror-like, I added several twists to the game with a focus on aberration and making something extraordinary come out of an ordinary environment. I won't spoil them for you, but in short, Something happens with the flower supply when you're sorting the flowers. As you investigate further, things take a very dark turn, inevitably leading you to discover the real purpose behind the flower factory you've been working in. As the player progresses through the game, the environment gets darker and darker, with a more dense fog. The colors are drained and you lose all sense of the world outside the factory. The pixelization and dithering also makes it have a stronger effect, having the dark areas of the fog be pitch black. The game is designed to make you feel isolated and trapped in an environment that used to feel safe and like nothing was out of the ordinary. This is how I show the toll on the player, making them see less and feel more drained and terrified as they get closer to the real reason why you are working in this flower factory. If you're curious about the ending of the game, give it a try. It's a very short game and it takes about 10 minutes to play through. If you like this video, I suggest you watch this one, where I talk about how I made my other horror game set in the same universe, even more scarier. Thanks for watching.